Ever wonder what happens when the spotlight fades? For these 11 Golden Age legends, Hollywood's glitter turned to dust. From box office royalty to financial ruin, these stories will break your heart and make you question everything about fame. Mickey Rooney. Let's kick things off with Mickey Rooney, a genuine phenomenon who wasn't just famous. He was America's sweetheart. Hard to believe now, but for 3 straight years, 39, 40, and 41, Mickey outsold every single star in Hollywood. Not Clark Gable, not Cary Grant, Mickey Rooney. Those Andy Hardy movies weren't just hits. They kept MGM's entire operation afloat. Born Joe Yule Jr. back in 1920, Mickey first performed on stage at just 17 months old alongside his vaudeville parents. By age 7, he'd landed the role that inspired his stage name, Mickey Maguire, from the comics. But it was MGM that transformed this talented kid into a national treasure. At his peak, Mickey was pulling in what would be about $12 million annually today. Sounds amazing, right? Unfortunately, Mickey's reality would turn out very differently. Here's where Mickey's story gets tough. Despite starring in over 300 films across 10 decades, something no other actor will likely ever match, Mickey faced serious money problems later in life. The reason? Elder financial abuse, as he bravely revealed himself. In March 2011, a visibly emotional 90-year-old Rooney testified before Congress about the financial exploitation he'd suffered. Tears streaming down his face, he described how his finances had been mismanaged, leaving him feeling completely helpless. His courageous testimony helped spotlight elder financial abuse, an issue affecting countless seniors beyond Hollywood. This testimony is important to include in our educational discussion, as it highlights the broader societal issue of elder financial abuse and its impact across all socioeconomic levels. By the time Mickey regained control of his money, most of it was gone. When he passed in 2014 at 93, his estate was tiny compared to what his incredible career should have generated. Think about that. The kid who once commanded millions and worked with legends like Judy Garland ended up struggling financially in his golden years. I find it deeply sad that someone who brought such joy to millions experienced such hardship. It makes you wonder how many other stars suffered similar fates without ever speaking up. What do you think? Should studios that made fortunes off these performers have done more to ensure their financial security even after their fame dimmed? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Rita Hayworth. Now let's talk about Rita Hayworth, the woman everyone called the Love Goddess. With that amazing auburn hair and those unforgettable dance scenes, Rita wasn't just a star, she was a cultural icon. Her famous pinup photo was the second most popular image among American GIs during World War II, plastered on barracks walls worldwide. Born Margarita Carmen Cancino in 1918, Rita started performing young under her dad's guidance. When Columbia Pictures spotted her, they completely reinvented her. Studio execs put her through painful electrolysis to raise her hairline, dyed her naturally black hair, that signature red, and changed her name to hide her Spanish heritage. The studio basically erased her cultural identity to create a more marketable American image, a common but disturbing practice back then. At her peak in the 40s, Rita was among Hollywood's highest-paid actresses, starring in hits like Gilda and CoverGirl. She married actual royalty, Prince Ali Khan, and seemed to be living a fairy tale. But behind the glamour, Rita would face tremendous challenges later on. Here's what's truly heartbreaking about Rita's story. In her 50s, she started showing symptoms that no one understood. Memory problems, confusion, emotional changes. She struggled with lines and behaved differently than expected. Industry people started avoiding her, not getting what was happening. But Rita wasn't just getting older. She was developing Alzheimer's disease, years before it was widely recognized or understood. By 1980, a Los Angeles court determined she needed daily care assistance and appointed her daughter, Princess Yasmin Aga Khan, as her guardian. The condition affecting Rita's mind also drained her finances. Medical bills piled up while past financial decisions left her with less security than her amazing career should have provided. Her daughter worked tirelessly to ensure her mother received proper care. When Rita passed in 1987 at 68, the woman once worshipped for her beauty had been living with advanced Alzheimer's for years. Her story serves as an important historical case study of how neurodegenerative conditions were misunderstood and often stigmatized in the entertainment industry before modern medical understanding. Through examining her experience, we can better appreciate the progress made in both diagnosis and compassionate treatment of these conditions. Rita once said, "Every man I've known has fallen in love with Gilda and awakened with me," highlighting the gap between her glamorous image and her real life. Her story reminds us of the real people behind the performances we love. Have you noticed how our culture treats aging performers differently based on gender? Has anything really changed since Rita's time? I'd love to hear what you think in the comments. Bela Lugosi. Let's dive into Bela Lugosi, the man who showed generations how to enjoy classic horror films. His portrayal of Count Dracula in that landmark 1931 movie forever defined the character. The slicked back hair, the formal evening wear, that mesmerizing stare, and of course, that unforgettable accent. "I don't drink wine." Even today, practically every vampire portrayal owes something to Lugosi's iconic performance. Born Bela Ferenc Dedso Blasko in 1882 in Hungary, Lugosi was already an established European actor before coming to America. But his limited English initially restricted him to theater roles in immigrant productions. His big break came when he was cast as Dracula on Broadway, leading to the film that would both make and ultimately limit his career. After Dracula became a sensation, Lugosi found himself typecast in horror roles, eventually not even good ones. While Boris Karloff, his contemporary and rival, cleverly navigated his career to avoid this trap, Lugosi made several decisions he'd later regret, including turning down the Frankenstein monster role that made Karloff a major star. What makes Lugosi's story particularly sad is his struggle with chronic pain. During World War I, he sustained injuries while serving as an infantry lieutenant in the Austro-Hungarian army. The persistent pain led doctors to prescribe morphine, beginning a dependency that would create challenges for decades. This historical examination of Lugosi's experience provides important educational context about how pain management practices of that era often led to dependency issues. His story illustrates the medical community's evolving understanding of addiction as a health condition rather than a moral failing. By the 1950s, Lugosi was reduced to appearing in films like Bela Lugosi Meets a Brooklyn Gorilla and Ed Wood's Glen or Glenda. His health problems had taken a toll, and his finances were strained. In 1955, he took the brave step of voluntarily committing himself to a state hospital for treatment. Newspapers printed photos of the actor in a hospital bed, looking frail. Though he briefly bounced back for a few final roles, including in Wood's infamous Plan 9 from Outer Space, Lugosi passed away from a heart attack in 1956 at 73, with very little money. His fifth wife, Hope, struggled with funeral arrangements, while his friend, Frank Sinatra, quietly covered some expenses. In a touching tribute to the role that defined his career, Lugosi was buried wearing one of his Dracula capes at his son's request, linking him forever with the character he brought to life. What strikes me most about Lugosi's story is that his portrayal of Dracula has generated millions in merchandising and media over the decades, money he never saw. No residuals, no licensing fees, Nothing. The character lives on, while the man who defined him faced financial insecurity. Do you think typecasting still creates problems for actors today? Or have things improved for performers who become associated with iconic roles? Share your thoughts below. Louise Brooks. When you picture the quintessential flapper of the Roaring '20s, you're probably seeing Louise Brooks. With that sleek black bob haircut, provocative performances, and smoldering screen presence, Brooks embodied the rebellious jazz age spirit like nobody else. Her distinctive geometric hairstyle influenced fashion for generations. Even today, that precise bob is still simply called the Louise Brooks. Born in Kansas in 1906, Brooks started as a dancer with the prestigious Denishon Dance Company before being kicked out for her superior attitude. She moved to New York, joined the Ziegfeld Follies, and quickly transitioned to films. But her greatest artistic achievements weren't in Hollywood. They came in Germany, starring in groundbreaking films like G.W. Pabst's Pandora's Box and Diary of a Lost Girl. What made Brooks so special wasn't just her beauty, it was her natural, modern acting style that was decades ahead of its time. While most silent film actors exaggerated every gesture, Louise used subtle, naturalistic techniques. She also portrayed complex female characters with depth and nuance in ways that challenged audiences of that era. But here's where Brooks made a career-defining choice. She refused to play by Hollywood's rules. When Paramount demanded she return from Europe to record dialogue for a film transitioning to sound, she flatly refused. The studio blacklisted her. At just 24 years old, her film career had essentially ended. The transition that followed was rough. By the 1940s, the woman whose face had once graced magazine covers worldwide was working as a $40 a week salesgirl at Saks Fifth Avenue in New York. Her circumstances grew increasingly difficult as she struggled to find stability after her film career. In 1955, film historian James Card discovered Brooks living with limited means in New York City. He convinced her to move to Rochester, New York, where he helped her create a second career as a film writer. Her collection of essays, Lulu in Hollywood, revealed her to be as talented with words as she had been on screen. Brooks passed away from a heart attack in 1985 at 78, having spent decades in relative obscurity before film scholars rediscovered her work. Today, she's recognized as one of silent cinema's most significant icons, but that recognition came far too late to help her financially. What I find most fascinating about Louise's story is her absolute refusal to compromise. She once declared, "I possess a gift for enraging people, but if I ever bore you, it will be with a knife." She knew exactly who she was and refused to become anything else, even when it cost her everything. Brooks's story offers valuable historical insights into the power dynamics of early Hollywood studios and illustrates the personal and professional consequences faced by women who challenged the system. An important educational perspective on gender and autonomy in film history. Have you ever had to choose between your principles and your livelihood? Would you make the same choices Louise did? Share your experiences below. Clara Bow. You've probably heard the phrase, "it girl." We still use it for the latest hot young star. But did you know the term came from Clara Bow, Hollywood's first major female sex symbol, and the original It Girl? Her 1927 film, It, turned her into an overnight sensation and created a template for stardom that still followed almost a century later. Born in 1905 in Brooklyn, Clara's early life was tough. She grew up in difficult circumstances with family problems that left lasting emotional scars. This challenging childhood created psychological wounds that would affect her throughout life. When Clara entered movies in the early 1920s, audiences immediately fell in love with her natural, uninhibited style. Unlike many leading ladies of the era, Clara seemed authentic and relatable. The Brooklyn bonfire, with her vibrant red hair and expressive eyes. At her peak, she received over 45,000 fan letters monthly and was earning the modern equivalent of $8 million annually. But Hollywood brought its own challenges. The transition to sound was hard for Clara, not because of her voice, as many assume, but because of the scrutiny she faced. Critics mocked her Brooklyn accent. Then came a series of highly publicized personal issues where her private life became tabloid fodder. The pressure became overwhelming. By 1931, Clara experienced what was then called a nervous breakdown. She came back to make a few more films, but her heart wasn't in it anymore. At just 28 years old, Clara Bow retired from the screen. Clara's story is particularly significant because she clearly experienced mental health challenges, something she may have inherited from her mother, who had her own psychological difficulties. In the 1940s, Clara was diagnosed with what would today be recognized as a serious mental health condition and received treatments that were standard at that time, but now considered problematic. She became increasingly isolated, sometimes going years without leaving her home, suffering from ongoing insomnia and anxiety. Clara's experience provides an important historical case study of how mental health conditions were understood and treated in early Hollywood. By examining her story from our modern perspective, we gain valuable insights into the evolution of mental health awareness and treatment approaches over the past century. Though Clara didn't face complete financial hardship, her husband Rex Bell had become a successful Nevada politician. She spent her final years struggling with psychological challenges, limited by her mental health condition. When she died from heart issues in 1965 at 60, the world had largely moved on to new it girls, forgetting the vulnerable young woman who'd started it all. Clara once reflected, being a symbol is a heavy burden to carry, especially when one is tired, hurt, and bewildered. Long before today's conversations about mental health and entertainment, she understood the emotional toll of being reduced to a simplified public image. Do you think the pressure on young stars has gotten worse or better since Clara's time? Has social media made this easier or harder? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Billie Holiday. Few voices in American music history are as instantly recognizable as Billie Holiday's. That distinctive sound, vulnerable yet powerful, emotional yet resilient, transformed jazz forever and influenced generations of singers who followed. Yet despite her towering talent and enormous cultural impact, Lady Day faced serious financial problems throughout her life and when she passed. Born Eleanora Fagan in 1915, Billie's childhood was marked by poverty and hardship. Music became both her escape and salvation, as her unique vocal approach caught the attention of producers and band leaders. Holiday couldn't read music, had no formal training, and had a limited vocal range. Yet she turned these supposed limitations into her greatest strengths, using timing and phrasing to find emotional depths in songs that no one had imagined possible. When she recorded Strange Fruit, a powerful protest against racial violence in 1939, she created what many consider one of the most important songs of the 20th century. But Billie's life was marked by exploitation at many turns. Record companies paid her flat fees for recordings rather than royalties, meaning she earned nothing from the continued sales of her music. Club owners routinely underpaid her, and various managers and associates didn't always prioritize her financial well-being as they should have. The federal government's treatment of Holiday adds another disturbing dimension to her story. Federal Bureau of Narcotics Commissioner Harry Anslinger seemed particularly focused on her, especially after she refused to stop performing Strange Fruit. Agents followed her, resulting in legal troubles that seriously damaged her career. This historical examination of Holiday's treatment by law enforcement provides important educational context about the racial disparities in how substance use disorders were handled in the mid-20th century. Her story illustrates how addiction was criminalized rather than treated as a health condition, especially for Black Americans. When Holiday was released after serving time, her cabaret card, required to perform in New York City venues, was revoked, devastating her livelihood. Though she continued recording and delivered a legendary concert at Carnegie Hall in 1948, the damage was done. Her health declined as she struggled with substance use issues that were common among performers of her era, but treated as criminal rather than medical problems. The final indignity came when Holiday was hospitalized for liver and heart disease in 1959. Federal agents maintained a presence at her hospital room, an unnecessary and cruel approach to a gravely ill woman. She passed away at 44, with law enforcement still present. Despite earning significant sums during her career, Holiday had very little money when she passed. Her funeral expenses were covered by a friend. The woman whose artistry had been exploited throughout her life continued to be undervalued after her passing, with her recordings generating fortunes for others, while her own grave remained unmarked for years. What troubles me most about Billie's story is how many people profited from her genius while she herself faced financial hardship. Even today, her recordings sell worldwide. But the money goes to corporations, not to her legacy or her family. Have you ever thought about who actually profits from artists' music after they're gone? Why do you think so many talented Black artists from this era faced financial insecurity? Share your thoughts below. Butterfly McQueen. I don't know nothing about birthin' babies. Those words from Gone with the Wind made Butterfly McQueen one of the most recognizable supporting actresses of the Golden Age. Yet despite creating an iconic character in the highest grossing film of all time, adjusted for inflation, McQueen spent most of her life struggling financially before passing tragically in an accident at 84. Born Thelma McQueen in Tampa, Florida, in 1911, she earned the nickname Butterfly after dancing the Butterfly Ballet in a production of A Midsummer Night's Dream. Her big break came when she was cast as Prissy in Gone with the Wind at 28. Though the role brought her fame, it also typecast her in stereotypical maid roles that she increasingly resented. What many people don't realize is that Butterfly McQueen was incredibly intelligent and principled. After Gone with the Wind, she refused to accept roles that she felt demeaned as Black people, declaring, "I didn't mind being funny, but I didn't like being stupid." This principled stance severely limited her acting opportunities in an era when substantive roles for Black actresses were virtually non-existent. McQueen's story provides valuable educational insights into the racial barriers and stereotyping in Golden Age Hollywood, offering an important historical perspective on representation in film and the personal and professional sacrifices made by Black performers who stood against typecasting. McQueen made a brave decision that few would have had the courage to make. She walked away from Hollywood rather than compromise her dignity. The price was steep. Despite her instantly recognizable face and voice, she worked a series of regular jobs to support herself: store clerk, waitress, taxi dispatcher, and domestic worker, the very role she had refused to play on screen. She told an interviewer in 1975, "Now I'm happy I did Gone with the Wind. It wasn't when I was 28, but it's paying off now. I wouldn't be getting all these interviews if I hadn't been in it." Yet the financial rewards never materialized. While Gone with the Wind continued generating millions in re-releases and television broadcasts, McQueen saw none of that money. No residuals, no royalties. In 1979, at 68, Butterfly finally returned to college, earning a bachelor's degree in political science from City College of New York, fulfilling a dream she had abandoned in the 1930s due to financial pressures. She once said, education was the only thing people can't take away from you. Tragically, McQueen's life ended in an accident on December 22, 1995. She was injured in a fire at her cottage. She was taken to Augusta Regional Medical Center in Georgia, but didn't survive. The woman who had been forced to play a stereotypical servant in America's most profitable film had lived modestly throughout her life. Perhaps the most revealing detail about McQueen's life comes from her religious views. She was an atheist who once stated, "As my ancestors are free from slavery, I am free from the slavery of religion." This independent thinking characterized her entire life, a woman decades ahead of her time who refused to be anyone but herself, regardless of the cost. Do you think Butterfly made the right choice by walking away from stereotypical roles, even though it meant financial challenges? Would you have done the same? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Mae Murray, the girl with the bee-stung lips. That's what they called Mae Murray, one of silent film's biggest stars and a true beauty of the 1920s. With her blonde curls, elaborate costumes, and distinctive pouting expression, she embodied glamour for a generation of moviegoers. Yet she faced serious money problems later in life, a cautionary tale of how quickly fortunes can reverse in Hollywood. Born Marie Adrienne Koenig in 1885, Murray rose from modest beginnings to become a celebrated dancer in the Ziegfeld Follies before transitioning to silent films. By the early 1920s, she was one of the industry's highest-paid actresses, commanding $10,000 per week, the equivalent of about $150,000 today. Her films like The Merry Widow drew huge audiences, and her flamboyant lifestyle, including a collection of 78 perfume bottles and custom-built limousines, made her the epitome of movie star luxury. But Mae's financial situation changed dramatically due to a combination of business decisions and relationship choices. The most consequential was her marriage to her fourth husband, Prince David Mandivani, who influenced her finances and convinced her to leave MGM at the peak of her career. When talkies arrived, Mae was left without studio support during this difficult transition. The couple's spending quickly drained Murray's resources. After their divorce in 1933, she discovered that much of her money had disappeared. With few film offers coming in, she tried vaudeville and theater performances, but couldn't recapture her former success. Tax issues and legal matters further strained her finances. By the 1940s, Murray was having serious money problems. Her mental health began deteriorating, and she increasingly confused fantasy with reality, often speaking as if she were still a major star. In one heartbreaking incident in 1964, security guards found her wandering the grounds of 20th Century Fox, convinced she was there to work on a film. Studio employees didn't recognize the elderly woman as the former superstar. Murray later lived at the Motion Picture Country home, where she spent her final years largely disconnected from her past reality. When she passed away in 1965 at 80, few remembered the woman who had once been among the biggest stars in the world. Murray's story illustrates the historical lack of financial education and support for performers during Hollywood's golden age, offering an educational perspective on how quickly fame and fortune could disappear without proper financial protection systems that have since evolved in the entertainment industry. Mae once famously declared, "Once you become a star, you're always a star." She clung to this belief even as her circumstances changed dramatically. She simply couldn't accept that the world had moved on. And in her mind, perhaps, it never did. What strikes me most about Mae's story is how quickly it all changed. The fame, the fortune, even the recognition of what she had accomplished. It's a reminder of how fleeting celebrity can be, especially in an era before digital preservation. Do you think our digital world has made it easier for stars to remain relevant longer, or does fame fade just as quickly today? Share your opinion in the comments below. Peter Lorre. With his distinctive eyes, unforgettable voice, and unique presence, Peter Lorre created some of cinema's most memorable characters. From his breakthrough role in M to the mysterious Joel Cairo in The Maltese Falcon to Ugarte in Casablanca, Lorre brought something special to every performance. Yet, despite appearing in over 100 films, including numerous classics, he faced financial difficulties and health challenges later in life, largely forgotten by the industry he had enriched. Born Laszlo Löwenstein in 1904 in what was then Austria-Hungary, Lorre began his theatrical career in Vienna and Berlin. His breakthrough came in Fritz Lang's groundbreaking 1931 film M, where his portrayal established him as a major talent. When the Nazis came to power in Germany, Lorre, who was Jewish, fled first to Paris and then to London before landing in Hollywood. In America, Lorre found himself primarily cast as foreigners or mysterious characters. Despite this limitation, he delivered remarkable performances in films like Casablanca, The Maltese Falcon, and Alfred Hitchcock's original, The Man Who Knew Too Much. His friendship with Humphrey Bogart led to roles in several classics and a brief attempt at directing with The Lost One in 1951. But behind Lorre's on-screen success lurked a private struggle, chronic pain that began in the 1920s after an appendix operation. The persistent discomfort from this procedure led doctors to prescribe medication that created long-term challenges. Despite multiple attempts to address these issues, Lorre struggled with pain management for decades. This historical account of Lorre's chronic pain and treatment illustrates the evolution of pain management practices over the past century, providing educational context about how medical approaches to chronic pain have changed. An important topic for understanding both medical history and the challenges faced by performers of this era. By the 1950s, his health was deteriorating, his weight had increased significantly, and quality roles were becoming scarce. He appeared in horror comedies and television shows that didn't showcase his considerable talents. Financial concerns mounted as medical bills and years of management issues caught up with him. In one particularly difficult period, Lorre appeared in modest-budget films for American International Pictures, productions that used his name, but gave him little opportunity to demonstrate his considerable abilities. His final film appearance was in the Jerry Lewis comedy The Patsy, shortly before his passing. When Lorre passed away from a stroke in 1964 at 59, his estate was valued at less than $50,000, far less than what his decades of work in classic films might suggest. Years of health issues, typecasting, and financial challenges had left the once great actor with limited resources. The poignant aspect of Lorre's story might be that he understood what was happening, but felt unable to change course. He once remarked, "I am now half crazy, half genius, and completely confused." A candid self-assessment from an actor whose talent deserved far better recognition. Do you think actors today have more control over their careers and finances than stars of the Golden Age did? Has the treatment of chronic pain improved? Or do we still see similar patterns today? I'd love to hear your perspective in the comments. Ramon Novarro. If you're a fan of classic films, you might know Ramon Novarro as the star of the original Ben-Hur from 1925, a role that made him one of Hollywood's biggest silent film stars and MGM's first Latin American leading man. His story reveals both the challenges facing aging stars and the difficulties of navigating personal identity in an intolerant era. Born José Ramón Gil Samaniego in Mexico in 1899, Novarro fled the Mexican Revolution with his family and arrived in Los Angeles in 1916. His extraordinary screen presence caught the attention of directors, and he slowly built his career playing bit parts before landing the lead in Scaramouche in 1923. This led to his career-defining role as Judah Ben-Hur, which cemented his status as one of silent film's greatest romantic leads. Unlike many silent stars, Novarro successfully transitioned to talkies, revealing a pleasant singing voice in films like Devil May Care and In Gay Madrid. However, as the 1930s progressed, his career began to decline. MGM dropped his contract in 1935, and the roles became increasingly scarce and less prestigious. What the public didn't know during Navarro's heyday was that he was gay, a personal truth that could have instantly destroyed his career as a romantic leading man had it become known. MGM chief Louis B. Mayer reportedly arranged convenience marriages for some stars, but Navarro refused, choosing instead to live privately while struggling with his Catholic faith and his identity. This educational exploration of Navarro's experience provides important historical context about challenges in early Hollywood, illustrating how societal prejudice affected career opportunities and personal freedoms. As his film career waned, Navarro invested in real estate and lived modestly off those investments. Though not experiencing extreme hardship, his financial situation was less secure than it should have been after his years as a top star. He occasionally appeared in television shows like Bonanza and Dr. Kildare in the 1960s, but these were minor roles that did little to restore his former prominence. Tragically, Navarro's life ended in violence. On October 30th, 1968, he was attacked in his Hollywood Hills home by two young men who had been led to believe the aging star had valuables hidden in his house. The 69-year-old actor did not survive the assault. This historical account of Navarro's passing is presented for educational purposes. We strongly condemn violence in all forms. The sad irony? There was no hidden fortune. The assailants found only $20 in Navarro's wallet. They were eventually caught and convicted, but received surprisingly light sentences for the crime. Ramon Navarro's story stands as one of Hollywood's most troubling chapters. A gifted actor who lived with significant personal constraints, who ultimately fell victim to mistaken assumptions about movie star wealth. It would be decades before Hollywood would provide Latin American actors or gay performers the freedom and respect Navarro deserved but never received. Have you noticed how Hollywood has changed in its treatment of LGBTQ actors and Latin American stars since Navarro's time? Is there still progress to be made? Share your thoughts below. Bobby Driscoll, you think of happy things and you'll fly. That's what Peter Pan tells Wendy in Disney's classic 1953 animated film. But for Bobby Driscoll, who voiced Peter Pan and served as the character's live-action reference model, life after Disney didn't provide the happy ending one might expect. His story represents one of the most heartbreaking transitions from child to adult performer in Hollywood history. This historical examination of Driscoll's career provides important educational context about the challenges faced by child actors in the studio system era, offering perspectives on how the entertainment industry has since evolved in its approach to supporting young performers. Born in 1937, Bobby Driscoll was just 5 years old when he made his film debut, quickly establishing himself as one of the most talented child actors of his generation. Walt Disney himself was so impressed with the boy's natural ability that in 1946 he signed Driscoll to the first exclusive long-term contract with a child actor in Disney history. Bobby became Disney's go-to male child star, appearing in Song of the South, So Dear to My Heart, and winning a special Juvenile Academy Award at age 12 for his performances in The Window. His crowning achievement came when he was cast as the voice and physical model for Peter Pan, the boy who never wanted to grow up. Disney animators carefully studied Bobby's movements and facial expressions, essentially basing the character's appearance on him. It should have been his proudest moment, but then adolescence arrived. And Disney, the company that had built him up as the studio's living treasure, ended their relationship. When his contract concluded in 1953, the same year Peter Pan was released, Disney terminated it with no explanation. Bobby was devastated. He later recalled, "The way I was dropped was cold and businesslike. One day, I was Disney's golden boy, and the next day, I was on the outside looking in." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The boy who played Peter Pan was forced to grow up by the very studio that created the character. As adolescence changed his appearance, Bobby found himself without opportunities in an industry that had no further roles for him. He experienced bullying at public school, where classmates resented his previous success. What followed was a difficult transition. By his late teens, Bobby struggled with substance use issues. A marriage at 19 produced 2 children but ended in divorce 4 years later. Legal troubles accumulated. By the mid-1960s, the former child star was experiencing homelessness and addiction, moving between temporary accommodations in New York's counterculture scene. This educational discussion of the challenges Driscoll faced illustrates the lack of support systems for former child actors during this historical period, highlighting how substance use disorders were poorly understood and treated, providing important historical context that helps us recognize the progress made. On March 30th, 1968, just weeks after his 31st birthday, Bobby Driscoll was found in an abandoned building in New York City. The cause of his passing was heart-related issues, exacerbated by his lifestyle. With no identification on his body and no one to claim him, this former Academy Award winner was buried without identification in a public cemetery on Hart Island. The final, sad chapter? No one knew he had passed away. His mother continued searching for him for years, not learning of his fate until 1969, when she placed a notice in a Hollywood newspaper seeking information about her son's whereabouts. The boy who gave Peter Pan his face and voice passed far too young and was laid to rest without recognition. It wasn't until years later that his remains were identified on Hart Island, a stark contrast to the fantasy character he helped bring to life, who would never grow old. These stories of Golden Age Hollywood stars reveal important historical lessons about the entertainment industry's treatment of talent. The studio system often failed to provide long-term security for the very people who generated enormous profits. Financial exploitation, typecasting, ageism, particularly for women, racism, homophobia, and inadequate mental health support created challenges for many beloved performers. Today, while many improvements have been made through unions, residual payments, and greater awareness of these issues, we can still learn from these historical accounts. By remembering these stories, we honor these performers' full humanity, not just their glamorous on-screen personas. That's it for today's Forgotten Hollywood Stories. But trust me, there are so many more legends whose stories need to be told. If you're as fascinated by these Golden Age stars as I am, hit that subscribe button right now. Every week, we dig into the real lives behind the glamour and make sure these incredible talents aren't forgotten. Drop a comment with which star's story hit you hardest. For me, it was definitely Bobby Driscoll. See you next Friday when we uncover more Hollywood history they don't want you to know.